Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Our top story: President Biden dealing a blow to Chinese e-commerce giants Temu and SHEIN. The administration moving to close a loophole that would affect 40% of U.S. imports. A rare gesture from Germany. 2 German naval ships passing through the Taiwan Strait, marking the nation's first trip through the shipping lanes in 2 decades. Details on Beijing's reaction. And China says would-be retirees must wait a little longer before beginning their golden years. The country is raising its retirement age for the first time since the 1950s due to kickstart the first day of the new year. The Biden administration is moving to close a trade loophole with China in mind. Chinese e-commerce companies have been evading U.S. tariffs by shipping directly to American consumers. That's by taking advantage of a trade rule called de minimis. Under it, packages shipped directly from foreign countries to U.S. consumers don't have to pay import duties as long as they are valued at less than $800. Chinese e-commerce giants like SHEIN and Temu are known to use the rule to their advantage. That's by sending orders directly to customers in the West via small packages rather than importing bulk shipments. Illegal shipment of fentanyl also reportedly slipped through the cracks in the same way. Over 1 billion packages entered the U.S. last year under this rule, most of them from China. The figure marks an over 600 increase from a decade ago. The administration's new plan would strip that exemption for certain products. It would affect over 40% of U.S. imports and 70% of Chinese textile and apparel imports. SHEIN and Temu say de minimis is not essential for their success. Those shares of Temu's parent company went down over 5% after the White House announcement. Biden's move comes after over 100 House Democrats urged him to take action on the de minimis rule. Lawmakers from both sides have proposed bills to bring changes. Shippers like FedEx and UPS are against the proposal. Importers say it would lead to tax increases on consumers. The rule was put in place for Americans to bring back souvenirs from overseas duty-free. But with retailers now taking advantage, de minimis imports hit the over $67 billion mark in 2020. Another update from the White House: the Biden administration also implemented steep tariff hikes on other Chinese imports on Friday. The measures include a 100% tax on electric vehicles. The White House says the tariffs will strengthen protections for strategic domestic industries from Chinese production. The Office of the U.S. Trade Representative said the taxes include a 100% duty on Chinese EVs, 50% on solar cells, and 25% on steel, aluminum, and EV batteries and key minerals. The agency said the tariffs would go into effect on September 27th. A 50% tax on Chinese semiconductors will start in 2025. China argues that its EV industry's success is due to innovation, not government control. Beijing has promised retaliation against the tariffs. TikTok and parent company ByteDance have a key court hearing coming up. They are striving to block a law that would ban the app as soon as January. Here's more.
The Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia will hold oral arguments on the case on Monday. TikTok and ByteDance argue the law is unconstitutional. They say it violates Americans' free speech rights. Lawmakers worry that China could access data on Americans or spy on them with the app. The law was passed overwhelmingly in April, just weeks after being introduced. TikTok and the Justice Department have asked for a ruling by December 6th. That would let the Supreme Court take up the decision before any January ban takes effect.
Intra-party friction among Republicans is on display once again as lawmakers are left in limbo on how to avert a government shutdown. But the party was united Thursday in passing one final China-related bill, with most Democrats opposing it. NTD's Melina Weiskup reports.
Wrapping up their China week, House lawmakers passed a bill meant to prevent tax dollars from propping up the Chinese regime's EV battery companies.
The American people do not want CCP-affiliated companies setting up shop in their towns and neighborhoods. The American people do not want to be held hostage to the whims of the Chinese Communist Party for our supply of critical minerals. Under the current regulations brought about by the Inflation Reduction Act, these nightmares have become our reality.
7 Democrats sided with Republicans, but the majority of Democrats opposed it, arguing it would hurt American innovation and businesses.
Ironically, this bill would make it harder for us to compete with China. These new unclear restrictions under this bill would make it completely unworkable and lead the auto industry and battery manufacturers to pull back their U.S. investments.
Republicans, however, claim that Biden's tax credits for EVs benefit China, since the country supplies the materials for EV batteries. While Republicans showed unity on this bill, cracks are showing on another. The week ended on a sour note for House Republican leadership after they were forced to yank a bill from the floor lacking their own party's support.
People have concerns about all sorts of things. That's how the process works, and sometimes it takes a little more time.
Speaker Johnson started out the week with high hopes of passing a bill to fund the government into March of next year, saddled with a measure to require proof of citizenship to vote. The bill doomed from the start in the Democrat-controlled Senate.
This proposal isn't even serious, it's dangerous.
Failing to secure that full party support, House Speaker Mike Johnson is now in for a weekend of conducting touchy budget talks. Adding to the mix, former President Trump has weighed in, saying that if Republicans can't secure that voting measure, they should, in his words, in no way, shape, or form pass a short-term government funding bill. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
More details on China Week on Capitol Hill, from supply chain issues to human rights to national security. The House this week passed 25 bills aimed at tackling threats posed by the Chinese Communist Party. 12 of the measures stem from reports and policy recommendations by the House Select Committee on the CCP. Commemorating the occasion, the committee's chairman, Congressman John Molinar, said, quote, "This week we will draw a line in the sand. With one voice, the U.S. Congress will tell Xi Jinping this far and no further." China's foreign ministry said it opposes provocations. That's after 2 German Navy ships sailed through the Taiwan Strait on Friday. Let's take a closer look.
It's the first such transit in 2 decades. The Chinese Communist Party claims Taiwan as its own, though it has never ruled the island. The body of water separating them, called the Taiwan Strait, is a major trade route where half of global container ships pass. Both the U.S. and Taiwan say the strait is an international waterway. Their German foreign ministry said it is not obligated to inform other nations of such transit, since the strait is international waters. The passage is a rare gesture from Germany. China is one of Germany's largest trading partners.
Facing an aging and shrinking population, plus a declining pension budget, China's top legislative body announced plans to raise its retirement age on Friday, marking the first time since the 1950s. According to China state media, the change will be gradually carried out over the next 15 years. Chinese men will not be allowed to retire until they reach 63 years old, while for women, the age range sits at 55 to 58, depending on their job. The shift extends the current retirement threshold for China by about 3 to 5 years for both genders. State media reported that Chinese workers won't be allowed to retire before reaching specific age requirements, but they also can't delay their retirement by more than 3 years. Beijing said the new rule will take effect on the first day of 2025. It's worth noting that among major economies, China still has one of the youngest retirement ages. What's more, a new policy will also impact pensions. Beijing said that employees have to contribute more before they retire if they want to receive their pensions. This rule is set to kick off in 2030. China used to be the most populated country until last year, when it was surpassed by India. But now its population has been on the decline for 2 years in a row. The new policy is taking heavy criticism online, with some complaining about the lower pay and delayed retirement age. The Hong Kong Journalists Association says dozens of Hong Kong journalists and their families have been harassed and intimidated online and in person. The group said it's been happening since June. The harassment has targeted HKJA's executive committee plus 13 media outlets. Here's the chairperson of the Hong Kong Journalists Association.
I noticed that it's affected 15 organizations in total, including 13 international and local media outlets. large, medium, and small-scale ones, as well as HKJA, and 2 other institutions that are in the activity of journalism education. So the main form of harassment comes from people who proclaim themselves as patriots. These people would send anonymous complaints by email or by letter to journalists' family members, their family members, employers, landlords, or other related organizations, including charities, schools, and private businesses.
Some journalists or their associates were targeted in private Facebook groups. At least 4 cases, trolls used Facebook and Wikipedia to make violent threats. Those include death threats. HKJA said they contacted media and the Wikimedia Foundation. Both are investigating the harassment.
Coming up, Canada is in talks about joining the next phase of AUKUS. The 3-member alliance works to counter Chinese military influence in the Asia-Pacific.
I believe that Canada has significant contribution that they can make to the second pillar of AUKUS.
A heavy blow for one of the big 4 accounting firms, PwC. Chinese authorities handed it a $56 million fine over its auditing of the debt-ridden developer Evergrande. And a new bill targets home consumer internet technology manufactured in China. It just passed in the House. We talked to an expert who says any internet router made in China could potentially be used as a cyber weapon. More on that after the break here on China in Focus. Welcome back to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Canada is in talks about joining an expanded AUKUS deal between the U.S., UK, and Australia. The alliance was formed to counter the Chinese regime's growing military influence in the Asia-Pacific. Here's the Canadian Defense Minister.
Conversations are taking place, and I believe that Canada has significant contribution that they can make to the second pillar of AUKUS. We have significant capabilities in both artificial intelligence and quantum computing. We also enjoy a very trusting relationship with the AUKUS members.
The initial phase of AUKUS involves the 3 founding members working on nuclear submarine technology for Australia. The alliance is also considering working with Canada, Japan, and South Korea, but the nations haven't released any details of the talks. Canada is looking for a bigger security role in Asia and forging deeper ties with Japan and South Korea. The Canadian Defense Minister in Japan today said he discussed with his Japanese counterpart Chinese incursions into Japanese airspace last month. He said concerns about Chinese military activity may be discussed at a G7 defense ministers meeting in Italy next month.
The heaviest punishment yet for international accounting firms operating in China. Chinese authorities slapped a more than $62 million fine on accounting firm PwC. That's over its auditing of Evergrande, China's most indebted developer. Here's the latest.
PwC would be banned from signing off on any financial results in China for half a year. Already, it's losing clients. China's finance ministry said PwC issued false audit reports of Evergrande and that the audit procedures had serious defects. In a statement, PwC said the work performed by its audit team with Evergrande was completely unacceptable and that its Chinese branch has cooperated fully with regulators. PwC came under Beijing scrutiny after Evergrande collapsed in January. Authorities said Evergrande inflated its mainland Chinese revenue by almost $80 billion. PwC had audited Evergrande's accounts for 14 years until 2023 and gave it a clean bill of health.
The U.S. House just passed a bill to protect government technology from Chinese hackers and other threats. Known as the Routers Act, it aims to prevent security risks in consumer internet hardware. In a May 31st article, Rebecca Grant from the Lexington Institute said routers made by countries considered threats could be used as cyber weapons. She added that the Routers Act will require the Commerce Department to investigate and list dangerous products. The devices could then be banned from sale in the U.S. Government agencies like NASA and the Department of Defense reportedly bought routers from Chinese company TP-Link. The House designated the week of September 9th as China Week to address these and similar issues. The week has seen a focus on bills tied to Chinese-made drones and electrical vehicle batteries, as well as other China-linked areas. To discuss more about the Routers Act, NTD's Fiona G sat down with Rebecca Grant, Vice President of the Lexington Institute. Grant is a national security analyst in D.C., specializing in defense and aerospace research.
Good to see you. I want to stay for a moment on this Routers Act. So if passed, this act could mean that an investigation into certain consumer internet hardware happens, and that's hardware with any kind of link to China or other adversarial countries. So what do you think an investigation like this would end up finding?
Well, this act asks the Commerce Department to check on routers, specifically the TP-Link and other routers that fail the security standards. And what's new about the Routers Act is it's not just laying the groundwork to ban future sales, but it would actually legislate and put in a law to require removal of the unsecure routers. And that's actually what the Routers acronym stands for, is remove our unsecure technologies. So it's really a good step forward, not only because these are widely sold and we need to understand what the potential threats are, but because these may already be in place in government agencies. And that opens several routes of potential routes for hackers to exploit that router to put on malware and conduct potential cyber attacks.
Yes, so you mentioned these potential dangers that these routers could have. They can even become cyber weapons. But are there any actions that regular, everyday Americans should be taking as well?
You've got to have a secure router. I wouldn't go buy one of these TP-Link ones. And of course, as consumers, we always have to use good cybersecurity practices. And one reason there's such strong bipartisan support is that Congress got a secret briefing last spring that laid out a lot of these threats. And that's really been instrumental in helping the passage of the China Week legislation.
A revelation by a former Chinese internet censor, shedding light on the mental stress and emotional toll of the job, especially for those who were tasked with deleting desperate pleas for help from Wuhan residents during the Chinese regime's strict zero COVID-19 lockdown. During that time, many censors were hired to block out such pleas and support Beijing's stringent virus measures. Chen Jie-yu worked as an internet censor during the pandemic lockdown. He revealed the impact of the job on his mental health to a Berlin-based Chinese language media outlet. Chen said many people in Wuhan made videos asking for help, desperately in need of medicine, food, or medical care. He explained that he was hired to scrub exactly these posts from the web, but he often did so while crying. He said that during the course of the job, he developed insomnia, shingles, lost a lot of hair, and constantly felt exhausted. He started seeing a counselor who helped him get a few nights of sleep. According to Chen, the internet company he worked for would give the censors a list of sensitive keywords to remove without explaining their meanings. New hires would receive a brief PowerPoint with terms like 1989, 64, Tiananmen, massacre, suppression, Xinjiang detention camps, and Falun Gong. Censors were instructed to block any content containing these keywords. Data shows that by the end of 2020, the parent company in charge of video platforms TikTok and Douyin employed over 20,000 censors. That's more than 20% of its total staff. China will allow wholly foreign-owned hospitals in 9 regions, including the capital Beijing. The change seeks to attract more foreign investment to help boost China's weakening economy. Let's dive in.
A document on China's Commerce Ministry website described the new policy as a pilot project designed to be implemented in certain relatively wealthy areas. It aims to bring in foreign investment for the country's medical sector. The new policy does not include hospitals that practice traditional Chinese medicine or mergers and acquisitions of public hospitals. The new rules also allow foreign invested companies to work on gene and stem cell technologies used for treatment and diagnosis. Though the research is restricted to free trade zones inside China like Beijing, Shanghai, Guangdong, and Hainan. China already has some foreign-owned medical facilities, but this will be the first time foreign investment will be allowed involvement in the country's most advanced biomedical research. Lai Rongwei, CEO of the Taiwan Inspirational Association, says the plan is a honey trap, an attempt by the Chinese Communist Party to get advanced biotech from other countries, with the ultimate goal of exploiting or weaponizing it.
They start by offering you great deals, then they push you to share your technology. They steal your trademarks, tech, and trade secrets, and eventually, they might even sabotage you. In the end, they could use your biotech to strengthen China's military, because future wars will be high-tech.
Beyond that, the policy also includes the registration, marketing, and production of products earmarked for nationwide sales. The expert believes the CCP hopes to address the decline in foreign investment by starting with the healthcare sector.
China's main problem is high political risk and ever-changing policies. With a declining economy, can foreign investors make money? The high political risk and the weak economy definitely threaten social stability.
In the second quarter of this year, China's foreign investment saw a loss of $14.8 billion.
Coming up on NTD, stay tuned for America's Hope with Kelly Wright. Kelly examines the Israel-Hamas conflict with Pierre Rahov, producer of a new documentary on Israel called Program S. More details on his new film. Plus, Cheryl Shomley, journalist from the Washington Times, shares her experiences in Israel after the October 7th attacks. That's tonight at 10 p.m. after China in Focus. Thanks for watching. See you soon.